fact that what we say we believe, sometimes I don't think we really realize what it means to believe in Jesus, which is what we did that first week. And he wanted to make it clear to them that when you say you believe me, that means that when I say things you don't understand, when I ask you to do things you don't want to do, when all of the persecution comes, it's going to come against you, that you still believe in me. You trust me, you listen to me, you follow me, and that is the only way. And then we talked about that incorporates abiding. That means you got to stay there, is what the word abiding means. And he said, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, they have to stay there, because the people that were going to believe in Jesus, especially at that time, really believe in Jesus, were going to be persecuted. They were going to lose their jobs, their homes, their friends, their families, because this was a Jewish nation, and when you believe in Jesus, you're now a heretic. And so it was a high cost to believe in Jesus. And I think our problem today in America is that the cost is too low. We can live our secular life and we can put little Jesus on the side and claim heaven and we're all good. Well, when Jesus was speaking to believe in him, he had never had that kind of easy believism in mind. That was not what it meant to believe in Jesus. So we covered that, and that it means that we will believe him, we will abide in him, and we will seek him diligently, which is where we incorporate the word of God, which is what we've been trying to do. And then week 2 was Bethany and Brandy, with the realization that many times we as Christians now, because we are pretty illiterate when it comes to the nature of God, the truth of Scripture, and I use that word even for all of us, because we all are. I mean, we're all in the goal of trying to get to know this God that's beyond our comprehension. And yet we make statements about him in the church that if we follow those statements through, many times people have fallen away from the faith. I just heard a story this morning of a man who was a faithful believer for a long time, working with another believer, and they prayed together, they did things together, and then once his father died, he decided, I want nothing to do with God. God must not be real. And we talked about that, and the reality that that's what the decision Bethany had to make, and Brandy too, is what she'd given her. And that was, do I believe that God is the God of my kids' lives, of everybody's lives around me, and when bad things happen in this world, is God still in control, and do I still believe in him? That's a huge, huge step of belief that has to happen. If every one of you here have had those crises of faith, where something has happened that is so difficult, you don't even know, you can't even figure out, God, what are you doing? Why would you do this? And you are now in a place where you either get to really believe like you said you did, that he is God. Because see, if we believe he is God, we know everybody's life is in his hands, and every life has number of days. So we don't question that. Is it difficult? Absolutely. But does it mean that he no longer is? Absolutely not. That's the kind of believing, and I use the example when the disciples said, when Jesus said, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood, which was absolute heresy to any Jew, and many of them left. They've been following him up, they loved the crowd, they loved the healing, they loved his teaching, they loved all about him until he said those words. And then they're like, oh no, I'm out now, because I can't even in my brain comprehend what you just said. That's just such heresy. And he looks at the disciples, who are just as confused as everybody else and think it's just as disgusting as everybody else. And he says, are you going to go too? And they said, no. Where are we going to go? You have the words of life. That meant that they had believed that no matter what it looked like, no matter what it felt like, no matter what their eyes or their common sense viewed that seemed the opposite of what should be, they were going to stick with him because he's God. See, once you believed he's God, then all the other things become peripherals. He's God, so I can deal with some things that I don't understand. I can deal with some things that I don't know why they're happening, that I really am having a hard time with. I can do that if I believe he's God. That's the reality of believing he's God. And then later on, as we said, on the night of the Last Supper, they found out what it meant to eat my body and drink, eat my body and drink my blood. And so all they had to do was stay with him, and then that really confusing thing that he said eventually became something they understood. Sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we have to stay even when we never do understand it. But that's because if he's God, we trust him. He's trustworthy. And that's a reality. So that was there. Many times we say things in the Christian realm that really are not true because we have wrong concepts of who God is, and we're actually fracturing each other's faith by saying things that are not true about God. And then the next one was, of course, Cherie did on the culture compromise. That not only do we in the church compromise our faith by the lack of understanding, but we now have, because of our lack of understanding, are taking in much of the culture. And the culture is now determining how our thought processes think. And instead of God determining our reaction to the culture, our culture is now making our thoughts about God. And we are very confused as to what that looks like. There are so many things out there that are being thrown at us to where we're like, you know, God is, I mean, everybody thinks it's right. It sounds right. I mean, really, these things are going on. And we are being tested in that belief system because of what the culture is demanding upon us. All of that summates in the last week's lesson, which was on biblical literacy. We must be pursuing His Word and the understanding. He gave us His Spirit so that we can understand His Word for the purpose of knowing how to live this life when everything's going to seem contrary. He said, if they hated me, they're going to hate you. He even said, they're not of this world. He said that, my disciples are not of this world. So therefore, he wanted, God, don't take them out of the world, but at least protect them within the world, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for them to see heavenly realities, spiritual realities in the midst of a world that's just in their face constantly. This is going to be a problem. And the way that we do that is we abide in Him, in His Word, by His Spirit, on a continual basis. And we talked about last week that the analogy he gave of abiding was the branch and the vine. You take a branch off a vine and it dies. There is no, I'm just going to kind of hang out in the same area as the vine, or I'm going to try to mimic the vine. No, it has to literally be attached and get its lifeblood from the vine, so that it exists with the vine's life flowing through it. That's who we are. And the life of the vine, the life of Jesus Christ, is given us through His Spirit by His Word. That's where His life comes from us, for us. So Bible illiteracy is a big problem with us. If we want to know Him, we know Him through His Word. And then today we're going to talk about the other thing. Now that we've dealt with some of the things that compromise our faith, and that's what Cherie talked about, is that many times our faith gets compromised because and she said it was a slight and subtle deviation from biblical truth. And that's what we do. We start saying, well, that's not that bad. That show's not that bad. Those words aren't that bad. These friends aren't that bad. These clothes aren't that bad. Whatever it is, we start to compromise biblical truth as to what is righteousness and what is not, what is evil and what is good. And pretty soon we're going to be like the Israelites of old, where we're calling evil good and good evil. And then we're in big trouble. So I think that that's really important as well. So I think when we begin to do that, the reason we picked this topic for today, this next one, is because once we've understood the things that are fracturing our faith, and we've started to get a grip on that, and we understand that we need to abide and take in His Word as though it's our very lifeline, because it is, then the next step is then prayer, because prayer is a communication with an unseen reality, is what prayer is. And so if we have believed and we are now part of that kingdom, and we don't want to be fooled by this world, and that kingdom is a spiritual kingdom that is unseen, and yet we have the directives of that kingdom right here. What is the communication that we use in order to just communicate with God within that unseen kingdom? And that's through the avenue of prayer. He's given us that privilege through prayer. Remember, at the very first week we had the Venn diagram. We live in two different worlds, and those worlds are interconnected because, like the Venn diagram was, we've got this kingdom, the worldly kingdom, and we've got the heavenly kingdom. When we believed, those started to blend. And now we not only speak it, we speak our English language, we speak the language of wherever it is on this planet, but we also speak a heavenly language because we're now part of a heavenly kingdom, a spiritual kingdom. Prayer is spiritual language, is what it is. And it should be a continual process of us interacting with the God that has saved us and brought us into His kingdom and made us part of His family. That's what prayer is for. And yet, how many of you here would agree that prayer is hard? I think it is. I think we all know that it should be, and yet prayer is very personal. So there's some things I want to talk about regarding prayer today, so that we can get a better grip on how we communicate and why we communicate within the kingdom of the unseen world. If we have truly believed He is God, we want to interact with this God. we want to know his ways. We want to understand that kingdom because now it's our home. So we have a lot to learn about the spiritual kingdom, and it comes partly through prayer. So that's our next, this week is this idea of the language of the kingdom. How do we understand and more fully use and incorporate the language of the kingdom so that it becomes second nature to us? Instead of a foreign language, it becomes our natural language. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to do that by starting out with a panel. And so what I wanted was to have an opportunity to say, we're going to look at three aspects of prayer. Prayer for me is like the most mind-boggling concept, and yet the most vital for my life as a believer. I've struggled with this area for 40 years. I mean, I've read every book. I've tried. I mean, seriously, I've done. You name it. It's all part of trying to learn. Because see, I want to know Him. I truly, truly want to know Him, and I know that prayer is part of that process. So I'm all in when it comes to that. I don't want to waste time here. We don't have time in our world today to waste time being trite. And I think that's a lot of times prayer ends up to be that because we don't understand what it is. We don't even understand the purpose of it sometimes. And we're kind of lost in it. So our goal today is to maybe tear down some of those confusions and identify the things that we struggle with and be honest with those, and then learn some new approaches maybe that could help that. So we want to look at some personal testimonies about struggle for us, what the panel is going to be. And then I'm going to go through some reminders about prayer that come from Scripture. And then I'm going to turn it over to you for the models of prayer from Scripture that you're going to look at that should be red, not red flags, but flags for us that we look at and go, oh yeah, that's what prayer meant to this person. So I should pay attention to that and incorporate that in my own prayer life. That this is what prayer looked like to them. So if I can have my 4 panel people come on up, I'd appreciate that. You'll be glad you did. Once we're done with you, you'll be glad you did this. I'll explain that in a minute. Let's get a name tag on all of them so that you guys know who they are. Sam, good. Everybody else have, right? You need a name tag. Oh, by the way, the water is up there in ice, but I haven't poured it.
Here you go, ma'am. Oh, thank you. Are you? Have you seen? Okay, you're more than welcome to be here. You're more than welcome to be at this table. You don't have to. No, you're more than welcome to be here.
Okay, hopefully everybody can see what's going on here. It's going to come loud because we're not using mic here. So, as you can see, we have Mariah. Now, Mariah, is this your first year here? It is. So, she has been faithful in every week. So, I wanted to get input with her. I've been fortunate enough to sit in some weeks with her. So, and Frankie's like an old time. And I meant that in a different way than that sounded. Meaning, she's been with us several years. So, she's not. Sue, again, been around. Sammy Joe's been here several years. She's the one that has a wonderful baby that everybody's like, oh, that we see being moved around. Okay, so guys, what I want to do here is I want all of us to hear, and we kind of put you on the hot seat here, but we want to talk about the realities of prayer and what it's really like in our everyday life. So I need honesty. And so we're not here to because we're all in the same boat. We all struggle with this the same as everybody else does. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that you're going to have to explain a little bit, if that works for you. Okay? Sue wants to plead the fifth, but we're not. So there's no pleading here. No mercy. No. All right. My first question to you is: do you believe you have a healthy prayer life? Right, we're going to start with you.
I would say yes.
Okay, I'm just going to try.
I would say no.
No.
I'm working at it.
Okay, Sue?
No.
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 No, okay, well then. Okay, my second question is why or why not? Which for yours would be, why do you think you do?
I talk to God like literally throughout every single day.
Okay, so it's a continual process for you and you're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Frankie, why not?
Well, I'm easily distracted. Like you, I've read every book.
Okay.
On how to pray, how to be quiet, listen. And I remember laying on the floor one time, a friend did this with me, and she's in Arizona, and so we both fell asleep when we tried to just listen.
Oh,
And
well, maybe nobody was talking.
but I don't know why, unless it goes way back to when I was first a Christian, and the women would get in a group and the men would get in a group on Wednesday nights. And I still in this way, if it's a group praying together, just whenever you feel like praying. Well, I'm always afraid I'm gonna interrupt something.
Oh.
So, but personally, at home prayer, I just get distracted.
Okay, anybody here get distracted? Okay then, good, we're all in this. Okay, so that's definitely a problem, is distraction, yes, okay, Sue? Why not?
Why not? It's confusing to me.
Okay,
It feels like it's too repetitive.
okay, okay, okay.
I've tried the whole thing too. I found where I am most connected was because of Cherie. She was helping me with my husband who was very ill, and I was singing and praying out loud. For me, that was a little bit better, but it was still very confusing as to how do I do that?
Okay, what do you mean by confused? Anybody here get confused when you pray, confused about prayer? Yeah, okay.
It's like, it wasn't in my background, even though my parents were both very strong Christians. I didn't really understand what prayer meant. I've tried all of those books also, Speaking as If He's Sitting Right Beside My Bed. But it just seems to me like I ask for the same things, or I talk about the same things over and over and over again, and I feel that there's more to it than that.
Okay,
I don't
anybody
know
agree
what
with
that
that?
is.
Repetition's a problem, and, okay, yes, I would say that that's very true, that can be a problem. And Jesus even talks about that, about not being repetitive, so we know that that's an issue. And yet the things that trouble us are the same thing most of the time, so very difficult, thank you. Sam and Joel, why not?
Well, my heart is in it. It's there. And I do talk to God throughout the day. But I kind of feel sometimes it's like, okay, I'm just saying the same thing over and over. Am I just asking for what I want? Or am I really praising God? Or I've found when I am really digging deep into my prayer life is when I journal.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but for me it helps. It's like I can get everything down and I can praise God and I can ask Him for things if I'm writing it down. But once I kind of veer away from that, then I'm like, it can be almost kind of like throughout the day, it's like, yeah, I'm praying, but it's very sugar-coated, or it's like the icing on the cake, it's not deep stuff.
Okay.
And then my husband and I try to pray a lot together. But sometimes at night with the little guy, I'm like, okay, I'm conked, I'm done, I'm going to bed at 8, and he's staying up till, 9, and it's like, sorry, dude, I have no room to pray. I have no energy left. But that's horrible. It's like, I should put that first. So I really struggle with sometimes just having the energy to put into it and making it a priority, versus just being like the sugar-coated kind of fluffy prayers, I guess.
Anybody here relate to that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we can see that we're pretty much all on the same page when it comes to some of the difficulties. All right, next question. Do you think of prayer as a responsibility you have to fulfill, or a privilege that you get to participate in? Which one of those would define your prayers the most, as far as why you pray? So, do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah.
Why do you think of prayer as a responsibility you have to fulfill, or a privilege that you get to participate in?
Well, for me, it's a privilege. The way that He made me, I enjoy talking,
Okay.
whether it's internally or sometimes externally. I find when I'm upset and angry, it's more external,
Okay, okay.
because it's easier for me to actually get out and I look crazy, but I'm in my kitchen and my kids are all running around everywhere, and I'll just talk to them about it.
Oh, that's good.
Like He's there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not wonderful, it's not great, but I was like, He already knows my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have to pray about my heart. And if I verbalize it for some reason, then it's easier to identify what I'm actually struggling with
Okay.
and then ask for that. So for me, it's a privilege to be able to have somebody there always,
Okay.
because that's not always been a thing for me.
Mhm.
He's always been there. People have.
Do you ever feel, because as I looked at this question, I thought it can be both ways. sometimes it feels like it is a responsibility that I have to fulfill, like if there's people that need prayer, that's a responsibility that I
That's
have.
true, I never thought about it that way.
So, do you feel that?
I do feel that, and I feel actually, like sometimes in the prayer, like I don't want to get stuck on my wish list.
Yeah.
Because it's super easy to do, because it's
Yes.
like, he loves me.
Yeah.
So, like, why doesn't he want to answer this prayer?
Mhm.
And what I've had to learn is, every prayer is answered, it just might not be answered in the way that makes sense to me at the time.
Mhm.
So then I've had to pray that,
Okay.
like, help me understand what is actually.
Right,
like-
where is, what this looks
Yeah.
like, yes, yes. Okay, very good, thank you.
And I think it's both. I feel like it's a privilege, but there's a responsibility thing. It's like right now I'm getting texts every day, long prayer texts from 2 different friends.
Can you talk louder, can you guys hear?
2 different friends have family members that have been in induced comas. One was in a bad car accident. And so they're just like prayer warriors, and so that helps me. But it's a responsibility, but it's a privilege to be part of that little group,
Uh-huh.
praying for these 2 people. But, and I also, it's like, I do feel like it's a privilege. Yesterday was a bad day, so I told myself, okay, and I had the whole day at home. So, no Facebook, no nothing. I'm gonna just sit out on the deck with the dogs and my Bible, and I'm just going to sit here. And I wasn't really praying, but I felt like God was there, and it was a privilege that I could just sit there and do that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
Combination of the
like,
two.
yeah, and I
Okay.
write I have a bullet journal, and I write all my prayers out, but I never feel like that's enough. I just don't feel like it's enough.
Okay, don't feel like it's enough. Anybody here ever don't feel like it's enough? Yeah, I think that's very true, thank you. Okay, Sue?
In my younger years, I would have said it was just my responsibility. I would have, I always prayed when there was prayer. And I thought, no, that's what I have to do.
Okay.
Every single day.
Okay, there's your repetition that you were talking about, okay.
Yeah, that
I'm done.
She said, now it's the one, now I lay me down to sleep. Can the back table hear what's going on up here?
No,
Okay.
not very well.
No, not very well, Tim?
About every other
Okay.
word.
Okay, talk real loud.
Okay, so that was in my younger years, but I feel, as I'm getting older, that God is refining me through situations that I have to pray because I need His help. And
That's when it's a
so
privilege?
Then it's a privilege, because I know that He is really the only one who's listening to me. He's not judging me, and I can go to Him with whatever it is. And so during situations that we've been in here recently, yeah, I have gone to Him more. But I'm learning how to change my prayer life in not just a list of what I want, but in His will for my life and for those around me.
Okay, okay, so, and that's part of the responsibility as well as the privilege?
Yes.
Okay? Samuel?
I'd say a little bit of both. And I think it's as I mature in my walk with Christ, like, it definitely seems more of a privilege. And how I get to have a relationship with the creator of this universe, like, that's just wild to me. So that's where the privilege part is, like, He gave me this opportunity to communicate with Him. Like, that's wild. So that's my privilege part. Like, that's amazing. Not everybody believes that. So, that's it. But then, kind of coming from a home where I was raised by younger Christian parents, like my mom and dad didn't become believers till they're in their late 30s, and I don't know, I was probably 7 or 8 years old or something like that. So they kind of taught us kids that, and now I lay me down to sleep, the rules, the regulations, the checklist kind of stuff. So even sometimes now when I don't pray, I get that, more like it's like a guilty.
I'm in trouble. Yeah.
I didn't do it today.
Any of you feel guilty for not praying? Okay?
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that, because again, if I'm leaning towards more of a relationship with Christ, it's just communication with Him, it's just talking, it's just like with a friend, you know, and also, He's a gentleman, He's not gonna force me to do it, and He'll forgive me if I don't do it one day, so I just kind of have moved from, it's the rules, I have to check off this box, to the relationship side, privilege side.
Okay.
But the responsibility, I do think it is something of being obedient, though. Like, I need to pray. So in my heart, I know that. Like, to be obedient, I need to be in communication with Him. And when I'm not, then something's off. Like, I'm either stagnant, which I don't want to be, or I'm declining, or I'm
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, so you're saying communication with God is a thermometer of our spiritual state?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, so we're all in a big trouble. Yeah. Okay, very good. I think we can all relate to most of that. Okay, next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think prayer is to your spiritual growth? On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is your prayer life to your spiritual growth? How would you, and I'm not talking about just, getting stuff from God or talking, I'm talking about you growing as a Christian, using prayer as that avenue on a scale of 1 to 10.
I would say probably an 8. I never score anything at 10.
Okay.
But it's just anything. But I do think, like, how can, it would be impossible not to know what his thoughts are, or, like, if we're using that as our gauge of where we're at, then, like, how would we know if we are progressing in our faith? How would we know where we truly are if we aren't talking to him?
Okay.
Like, it just, that makes sense to me, that would be vitally important, to ask him about different things and get his feedback.
Okay, it does make sense, doesn't it? That would be part of it. That's good. Okay.
I would say a 10, even though obviously I'm not there, but I have friends who are what I call true prayer warriors, and they are praying people, men and women, but especially women, it seems like, I feel like
Okay. Okay. So you see them as using prayer in their life as a method of spiritual growth, and you feel like it is an identification factor of their spiritual growth on how much time they're spending. Okay. And you want to get there? Why? Why do you want to get there?
because I just want to be spiritually mature.
Okay.
It's a slow process.
Do you think? Let me ask you. I'm going to go
Okay.
rogue here. Do you think you're? What did they say? Oh. Do you think your friends would say that they are spiritually mature?
I don't know if they'd say that at all.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how that goes? I wondered about that.
Deanne,
Do what?
would you say you're spiritually mature?
I'm in the process of.
Oh, she's over here. Okay.
She's one of the ones.
Okay. So yeah, would you say that you're necessarily where you want to be yet?
I don't think I'll ever be.
You are, okay, that's right. So, again, we see that abiding aspect, the necessity to abide continually because there's a continual process going on here. Okay, very good. Sue? Scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for spiritual growth?
Well, I don't know if I can put a number on it.
No, you have to. It's my answer. You have to answer my
I know that prayer is answered. He's answered my prayers over and over and over again. And that's what makes me frustrated with myself is I see it, I know it, but whatever reason, I don't do it all the time. And so, do I think that it's important to my spiritual growth? Absolutely, but I would say maybe an 8 or a 9 also. And I've seen it. So then that's the puzzle there as to then if I've seen it, why don't I do it more? Laziness, too tired, distracted. I can pray for my children, for my grandchildren, for my husband. It's more difficult for me to pray for myself.
Okay, my
struggle
sister
with
would
that.
relate to that. She would just have this discussion. Okay, I love the fact that you said, I don't know why I would not do it. Do you ever feel that way? Do you go, what's my problem? We're talking about the God of the universe here that was already said. What a privilege it is. And yet we go, what is my deal? I do that all the time. Why do you even want me here? Because I'm just like, I can talk to anybody, but I have trouble talking to you. I don't know why. Although, again, I believe it's a growth process. So I appreciated that very much, yes. Okay? Scale of 1 to 10.
10.
10, okay.
Give me a 10, just because I think that prayer is just one aspect of spiritual growth.
Yes.
But it's huge, it's crucial. I mean, it's just like if I want a really good relationship with my husband or my best friend or whoever, communication is like key. Like, I mean, when I was early married, I've been married for 9 years. I know that's not a lot, but that was one of the
In
first.
this day and age, it's a lot.
That was one of the first things that we learned in like Love and Respect and whatever, all those books and classes that my husband and I took together. Communication was key. It was like number one, and that was the hardest thing for us to figure out, but we worked and worked and worked to where we're better than we were. We're still working on it. But I would say communication for us in that relationship was the number one thing that has built us, other than obviously being connected to God and whatever, all that stuff. But prayer, I would find, yeah, it's huge. It's super important. I find it for me, it's something that when I am working on it, when I am journaling, I'm growing. When I'm not growing. When I'm not in connection with Christ. And praying for myself, one thing I do always pray for myself is every night, and I don't know if this is a repetitive thing, I'm like, God, help me to see myself clearly. And that can be, I don't know, just, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like, God, just show me, what do I need to work on in my life?
Don't let me be blind to myself.
Yeah, because I want to grow, my heart is there, and I think whether I check that box off every day, or do it perfect that day or not, it doesn't really matter. I think it's where it's my heart. Where's my heart? You know, I'm trying my dangest. I want to do it right, but will I be perfect? No, because I'm a human. I have to give myself some grace too sometimes, which I'm not really good at. Ask anyone. I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm a type A personality, let's go get 'em kind of person, and when I don't do things, I beat myself. But overall, I think it's huge. I really do. I think prayer is key to spiritual growth, at least for me.
Okay, so again, we've got that reality. How many of you think prayer is really important to spiritual growth? Like way above 5, probably closer to 10. Okay. And yet, how many of us feel like we do it to the place where that spiritual growth is happening? See, this is what we want to discuss. Is we have an issue here, don't we? This is a problem, and we don't know why. We don't know why. I don't think there's anybody in here that I would say I don't really think that person loves God. I think all of you here were here because of that reason. And yet, why do we struggle spending time with Him? There is a reason. There's got to be a key to this, and there is. There's several things that we're going to talk about here in a bit. I was going to go rogue again, but I won't due to time. Okay. I want to. The next question is: what is the most difficult aspect of prayer for you? What do you find the hardest to do in prayer?
I think for me, not getting in that list pattern.
Oh, okay. Not getting in the list. Okay.
Not like just seeing them as the one that's going to fix everything, but like taking time and focusing on where my relationship is at with Him and focusing on my weaknesses. Because I'm also very much like a perfectionist, so it's really hard for me. I think that's a great thing, and I should probably start adding that in at some point, because like asking Him, really, where am I? I have a hard time going there, because I love to pray for everybody else. And I love to talk to Him about my kids, talk to Him about situations, but to like really ask Him about where I am and take the time to listen. So for me, taking the time to listen is super hard.
Listen's a key word there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
What she said.
Oh.
But it's like, and to be sincere and not just checking it off my morning list or something. And
Like a requirement.
Yeah, but I still always start out with, for myself, the prayer part, it was like, search my heart and take my selfishness away. I don't want it to be about me, I want it to be about who I'm praying for. But yeah, it's all a struggle, and hoping you have an answer.
Sometimes we are our own worst enemy, aren't we? I think that's really the problem, is that we get in our own way. Sue?
That's hard. Being honest, praying before I fall asleep.
So, weariness, okay, that
So,
was mentioned before.
my prayer life has really changed over the years, and so trying to think through the day about things is more helpful for me, because then at night, it becomes too, okay, this and this and this and this, and I don't want it to be like that, so I'm trying to change it where I pray more, will I see this person the way you see them? Open my eyes. So maybe that is a prayer about myself, but there's so many needy people that I pray for that that's a difficult one to know how to pray for them.
Oh, okay.
So I don't exactly know what to pray.
Any of you here have trouble knowing what to pray?
So
Or how to pray?
I just kind of pray for me to see them as he sees them, but also that his will is to be done, because I just don't know what to pray for.
Right, and that's, you said earlier that it's confusing.
It is very.
And this is what you were talking about, is it is confusing sometimes to even know how to approach
Yeah.
that place, how to approach the throne of grace. With the need, do you think, well, no, never mind. I got all kinds, I could go on forever with questions, go ahead.
I think what I struggle with is, in the back of my mind, if I'm being true and honest with myself, is doing it right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, you said you're a perfectionist.
No.
Or type A, no, she's the perfectionist, but you're the type A, you gotta get it done.
I get it. No, yeah, like, doing it right, and I don't know if that kind of goes back to my childhood of it maybe being like a little too legalistic at certain points, but my parents were just trying to do what they were trying, you know,
Yes.
the best that they could at that point in their walks with God, and we've grown a lot together in our relationships with all of it. But I think it's just doing it right and holding myself to this stupid standard that's unrealistic, you know, like, oh, I have to pray, you know, exactly the way the Lord's Prayer says I need to. You know, I need to sit down and I need to say, every time. And when I don't, then sometimes I beat myself up for it. But then I also know in my head too, it's like, oh, it's just a relationship. I go back to that. You know, it's just a
Yes.
relationship. I could just talk to him however, you know, I would talk with a friend or whatnot. But the thing I struggle with most is probably just thinking I'm not doing it right. Which is, I think, maybe just an opportunity for Satan to weasel into my mind and be like, hey, you're not doing it good enough, so just don't do it at all. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's that's why I read all the books. Because I have this whole want to do it right kind of thing. Because I think it is so powerful that you won't want to wield that sword without knowing what you're doing. You know, so I think that's where it is for me. Thank you. All right, last question. See, guys, it wasn't that bad. Do you have a plan to improve your prayer life? And if so, what is it? Or are you satisfied with the way it is? You kind of felt like yours was good.
I did until we really delved into it. And then also the glass is half full kind of person.
Yeah.
So, I think honestly, I need to take more time to listen. It is as simple as that.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And, yeah, and just giving some grace to myself as far as I feel like I'm weak in the word, so I'm sure there's some people who are super strong in the word. But learning about God more.
Oh,
That way I
yes.
can better hear him, because I feel like sometimes I can hear him clearly, and then sometimes I can go months without really having any clarity. And it's like, I'm going to him, so why am I not hearing? Or what is it about it that I can't understand? And I know that's where the gap is, it's on my end, but what can I do to listen better?
Yeah, that's great. And that's why we're here, because we know that he does speak through his word. So that's part of the listening process, isn't it? Yeah.
After last week's thing about abiding, and I've been, saying that verse over and over, and I'm realizing that I'm spending more time in the Bible now because I want to abide in him moment by moment. Then that would help my prayer life.
Wouldn't it though, yeah.
Because you're knowing what he says all along, and sometimes it's like, I'll read some verses and they'll say, well, this is what this means, but then there'll be like something that's then so I have to process it and pray about it and say, what exactly are you meaning? But I think that if I stay with last week's message about abiding and just spending more time in the Bible and less time with magazines or, whatever, catalogs that come in the mail, and just like throwing those in the trash and spending time with Jesus, that he will forgive me.
You'll speak, won't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that will help my prayers.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Sue?
For me, it's just coming here. It gives me accountability. It makes me think about God all the time. I'm an avid book reader. I talk with my daughter all the time about it. So I just think those are always my plans, to just keep listening to him, reading, and keep coming here.
Okay,
It's
good.
really helpful. I mean, I think where I was 14, almost 15 years ago, to where I am now, you wouldn't have caught me dead up here. No way would
It's
I
true, I've
have
asked
been
her
up
before.
here. Yeah, she has, and absolutely, nope, I'm not coming up here. But you know what, I'm okay because I know God is with me. And so whether that's prayer life, getting older,
Your daughter over here
mom so I have a big support group. You know, I just know he's at work in my life, and so I'm just gonna keep continuing because it's working.
I appreciate that, because really that's why we do Pursue, because the goal of Pursue is to know God. And that's what influences our prayer life. So that's the goal. So yeah, I feel the same way, I wouldn't have done it for 35 years. So,
Well, practically, I think, to get back to prayer, what I do, step by step, I'm such a logical kind of person, a math person. I would say setting aside my time for Christ and journaling. I know that that's just my prayer language, and looking back on some of those journals and kind of being like, wow, this is where I came from. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But just setting aside that time and just doing it, and I do it. Like I should say that I don't, but do I do it enough? Am I making that a priority? Is it consistent? Yeah, is it consistent? And then constantly having my mind on things above. That verse, Colossians 3:2, is in my house. I thought I wouldn't feel it. Keep your mind on things above, or whatever. And I just love that, because I look at it, it's in my living room, and I sit in my living room a lot with that little guy. And I just think about that, and so just kind of constantly having that perspective helps me. And having those verses in my house, I'm a visual learner, I need to have stuff kind of out. So obviously visual and writing, that's just my thing, the way I learn and sink things in. So to grow my prayer life, I would say I need to continue to set aside more time and journal. Sit down and be intentional and just do it. Instead of
she's gonna do it, we all heard that.
Instead of because I love to get stuff done. So I'm like, okay, when there's a nap time, I'm gonna go do and do it as fast as I can. Do all those things really matter?
Yeah.
Maybe they do to me, but ultimately, are they things above? I don't, probably not. So.
Yes, yeah, we do need to be a little more disciplined and prioritize things, yes. I would agree with that. Well, thank you guys, stay right there just for a second. As I said, prayer's been a fleeting thing in my head that I pursued for a long, long time. And although like I said, I've told many of you before, I sat one night in my chair asking God about a very difficult situation, and I'm just like, Lord, I've been reading the Word, but I said, Lord, you got to speak to me, you got to tell me what I'm supposed to do, and it's literally, if he spoke audibly, it would have been an audible voice, but he said, what more do you want me to say? His Bible was on my lap. And I heard that. What more do you want me to say? In other words, my answers are there. I can speak to you there. Look for me there. And I do believe that. I believe that the Word is really the key to prayer, which we're going to practice some of that today. But I also love to get the input of other people, because I like to know what they've learned. I like to know what they've identified, and to know that we're all pretty much in the same boat. Have you found that out? That you're not the only one who struggles in those areas, and some of the key terms that you actually use we're going to talk about today, because they are such a universal struggle when it comes to prayer, because of the human condition. But one of the most helpful, the most intentional, the most I felt was kind of dynamic to me in all of the books that I've read on prayer was this workbook that my sister bought me, and she'd never done it. She just bought it, thought it sounded good. She knows that prayer is a big issue for me, and so she got this for me. And I'll tell you what, this book gave me a new perspective on prayer that I'd never had before. And I've gone through it probably 4 or 5 times on my own. It's a workbook, so I highly recommend it. And it was so weird, because I was looking at it for some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, and Brandy was looking it up to see if she had any other books, and we found out she died like a month ago of a heart attack. So she was my age. So that was very strange.
Very young, by the way.
Yeah, it's young. It's young. Yeah. So anyway, I highly recommend, and I give this book to many people that I really know are serious about prayer. So you guys each get one of these books for being on this panel. See, I told you they would not be.